This is a great honor for me, two of my close friends, and you know, the intersection of business, politics has been with us since, 2007, and it continues each and every day. And I think, we have two people that I think really speak truth to power. You may not like all of their views, but I think that they're sincere and that their hope is that we come together in a better way. So obviously, for those who don't know Valerie, 8 years.
Where did you get those socks, though?
My wife. It's the coolest thing I got going.
Just asking, okay.
They're pretty snap. I like those socks.
Yeah, snap. There you go. So Valerie, as you know, was a two-term advisor to President Obama. She ran the Office of Public Engagement, the Women's and Girls Initiative, and has done amazing things. Thereafter, she's on the board of Lyft. It's congratulations to that with your IPO. And Anthony, as you know, is the founder of SALT. And I think, unlike other years, I think this has been the best SALT conference because this is a time where we need to bring people together. And there were all walks of life here. Right, left, center, all types, and I want to thank you for that.
Sure, Robert, thank you.
All right. So enough introductions, let's go right into it. The first question I would ask is, if the president would listen to either of you today, what would be the advice that...
Valerie has a better chance of having listen, but go ahead.
We're going to go into some good questions here, but just want to open up with a softball. What would be the advice you'd give him today? Valerie?
Well, a few things, and I actually would give this advice to any president. Be truthful. Earn the respect of the people that you're there to represent. And remember that you are there not in service of yourself, but in service of the American people. You are a public servant. And in the same theme, try very hard not to put your own kind of personal interest stake in the game. And that means you're going to be strong enough to absorb some pain, but keep focused on what you're there to do, and that is to make our country as strong and as vibrant as it can possibly be.
Anything directly to him, you'd say?
All of those two. Maybe beginning with the first one. You just have to be honest, you really do. And I think people are willing to accept all kinds of frailty and mistakes and whatever it is if they think that you are being straight and honest with them.
Anthony?
So, I'm here to provide insight so you guys probably don't know this, but the president has a short attention span. So he probably wouldn't be able to get through all of what Valerie just said because that's his personality. So I would keep it to a bumper sticker, and I would say, same policies, less crazy. That's it. Same policies, it's like light beer, like tastes great, less filling. Same policies, a little less crazy, everybody's going to be happy, And so I think you get right down to that. Same
Anthony,
policies, less crazy.
Does that mean everything? You agree with everything he's done? Sorry, Robert.
No. So let's say 0.9 same policies and less crazy. I don't like Larry's taking a shot at me. I don't really care if people like me or not. Trust me, I've been exploded out of the White House embarrassingly and was tabloided, so I don't care. But I like telling people what I think. One, I don't agree with the issue with the free press. I wrote an op-ed on that. I think I may have sent it to you. The free press is one of the big pillars in the society. You can find that op-ed on the Hill. President's not happy with me for that op-ed. I don't like the child separation policy. That has to be corrected. I'm not in love with the tariff, trade, public negotiation strategy because you're negotiating with people that don't want to be embarrassed publicly. And so I don't know if that's the best winning strategy in that situation. I'm not in love with the public rebuking of the Federal Reserve Chairman, where we've had 106 years of relative Fed independence.
Anthony, I got a feeling we could have a long list of this.
Okay,
but
I'm just saying, Valerie's asked me on that question. But I do like the deregulation.
Have you ever tried to moderate a panel with Anthony Scaramucci?
All right, go ahead. I'll shut up.
He's the judge and the jury.
No, you just asked me. I'm just telling you.
I could have listened to him go on for quite a while answering that question.
All right, so we're going to go in.
Let me ask Valerie a question. Do you like anything he's done?
Yeah, actually, I would say.
They both have a book, so this is like one of these shows that they're just going to promote each
shut
We
other.
would be talking like this even if we didn't have books, wouldn't
Val,
we?
what do you-
Yeah.
yeah,
You know what?
what do you-
Actually, one of the issues that I worked on a lot in the Obama administration was criminal justice reform. I think our criminal justice system is completely broken. It is inhumane, and it disproportionately hurts people of color and people who are poor. And so making modifications to it so that it is more humane at the federal level sends an important message to the states. And most of the people who are incarcerated, 2.2 million people, are in the states, and just a couple 100,000 at the federal. But by him supporting the First Step legislation, it's a baby step, but it's a step in the right direction. And I hope that that builds momentum and sends the right message to the states.
I want to get into some policy discussion. Then we're going to do a little rapid round that will be fun for the audience. But let's.
Trying to take back over.
I'm taking it back. So let's talk about what was the biggest topic this midterm: healthcare. And Anthony, I'm going to start with you. One, do you think healthcare is a right in this country? And are you supportive of the direction we're going with the Affordable Care Act and extending the public option?
So it matters less what I think, but let's go over what the facts are. We've had socialized medicine in the United States since 1986. And so who socialized the medicine? Ronald Reagan. And let's go back to what he did. He signed a bill that gave the right to every single person that enters an emergency room to get care. It could be a strep throat, an ear infection, or a trauma. And so it's a right, and it's been in the country for 33 years. The problem that we've had with healthcare is we've never figured out the right mechanisms to appropriately allocate capital in a way that delivers it at the lowest cost with the highest service. And so Obamacare, Romney Care are elements of trying to do that. Are they perfect? They're not perfect, but we, in a society like ours, we have to figure that out. And we're smart enough to figure that out.
So, Valerie,
they're not perfect, but
yep.
we're already there. We were there in 1986, is my point, Robert.
Valerie, in the 2020 primaries that are happening, there has been this shift to the left. And there's a lot of candidates that are for Medicare for all. And there's a lot of different definitions of Medicare for all. But let's say that the one we're talking about is not extending the public option, but literally ridding private insurance and going through a true single-payer environment. Are you supportive of a Medicare for all approach? Or are you more for extending Obamacare and extending the public options? Where are you today, knowing that the Affordable Care Act is now a decade plus old?
All right, well, so let me say a first thing. I am for whatever will make healthcare better in our country that can get passed. And I chair the board of the University of Chicago Medical Center, and I would say this to you, Anthony, probably the worst care you get on a continuous basis is what you get in an emergency room.
Totally agree.
There's no primary care physician, there's no continuity of care. The history is taken when you're already in pain, and so it's not as thorough as what you might get in a checkup. And so I think that, and not only that, it's expensive. And you say you go to the emergency room, but who pays for that visit to the emergency room? We pay for that visit to the emergency room. And so we were trying to move the needle and begin to say that it is a right to have quality health care, not just in extraordinary measures, but quality health care for everybody. And I think that the ACA did that. Is it perfect? No, it's not perfect. Are there pockets in our country where there isn't enough competition in the private market, and so insurance premiums are too high? Yes, that's absolutely true. And so if the next step is to improve that in a way where we could have some competition and bring down those costs, fine. If, on the other hand, where there were sufficient votes to have a public option, I would be very comfortable living in a country where everybody had quality health care and it was a right and it was not as expensive as it is in other countries. Sure, I would do that.
Yeah. So let's segue to another political issue. We were very proud. I'm not being partisan here, but I think the country was very proud when the Paris Climate Accord was passed and we were trying to do something with climate change. President Trump has reversed that. We're one of the 2 or 3 countries that are not part of it. So once again, the party has shifted even more to the left. So I have 2 different questions. Anthony, the one for you would be, should we re-enter the Paris Climate Accord, and what would be your view? And for Valerie, yours is a little different. Then we have the Green New Deal, which in my opinion, there should be a Green New Deal, not this Green New Deal, because they included everything in the kitchen sink. everyone gets free employment, every health care for all. It wasn't about climate. Are you a supporter of the Green New Deal, or where do you think we should be with climate? So Anthony, if you can go first.
So, again, I am not a climate denier. I think we have issues where human beings are affecting the climate. I'm also not a scientist. I can only go by what my astute scientific friends say, and they would say that it's probably 60 to 80% human, and some of it is what's going on with the sun and activity, that's solar activity. So, but I definitely think humans are contributing to the decline of the environment. And what I would say to Republicans in the room, that if you're a climate denier and you don't think it's affecting the climate, it is destroying the quality of our air. It is creating asthma in children. So you got to fix it either way. So in other words, so now if you're telling me that the right way to fix it is to go into the Paris Accord, after studying that, and I did have the opportunity to study that, I was there for a short period of time, but I did study the thing. There's a lot of people in the Paris Accord that are not in full compliance. There's a lot of issues related to the Paris Accord. The centigrade reduction in terms of what's going on in the Paris Accord isn't even enough to get us to where we are. And then, what you find, our states have done a very, very good job environmentally, California in particular, where emissions are actually going down in the United States pursuant to the climate accord. So should the president be back in the climate accord or not? It's a very big, broad issue. But the things that I can address and the way I think about things are three. Number one, whether you believe in climate change or don't, I do. You got to fix it, because we're dirtying the water and we're dirtying the air, and you're creating asthma in 7-year-old kids in Beijing. You got to fix it. Okay. Number two, the Green New Deal. Can I just address that for 2 seconds? I think the mistake that the left is making with the Green New Deal is it's so far over by that door in terms of being to the left that people look at it and say, okay, that's totally crazy. And so if they came in with something that was like center left, people look at it and say, okay, that could be a practical solution. I just don't think the solution with the cows farting and we're going to take a train to Hawaii, I don't think those are great solutions. We're going to stop the cows from farting.
We're going back to Anthony's 11-day memories.
Okay.
All right, so look, all of the scientists who are well recognized say that climate change is real and that it's evidence-based and that we are responsible for the lion's share of it. And so yes, I think we should fix it. And yes, I think we should go back into the Paris deal. And it's not a perfect deal, but under President Obama's leadership, he was able to get about 200 countries around the world to at least commit to it. And part of our commitment was to get the states and the private sector to step up. And I think one of the reasons why we had the best partnership going into the deal was because of the private sector. Many of the businesses, and many of the businesses that made those commitments as a part of the accord continued those commitments even after the country pulled out of it. So the federal government pulled out of it, but many of the states and the businesses
But more
did not.
specifically, the Green New Deal.
I'm getting to it. Anthony gets to digress. I will absolutely answer your question. So I am all for big, bold ideas being thrown out there. And I don't think even the sponsors expect it to pass in total. But to have a debate, I think, is healthy. And I don't think that we should just say, okay, well, let's throw it out because it is so big and so bold and expensive. But let's have a conversation about it. And I'm sure, as it should be, you end up somewhere in the middle. But my experience with negotiation, and I think that would be the case with everybody here, if you start in the middle, you aren't going to end up in the middle. The other side isn't going to go, oh yeah, let's do that. They're going to try to pull you a little bit in another direction. So kudos to have new members of Congress who are coming up with great new ideas. And when I say great, I mean great like in size, not necessarily in substance. So I don't have a problem with it. I don't think it will pass, but I don't think anybody's expecting it to. We're just trying to get people's attention to have a conversation, a bold conversation about what's happening in our country and what we could do to make it better.
I think there's a bigger issue, though, and I want to see if Valerie agrees with this or not. When you disengage from something like that, or you disengage from TPP, and you have these America First-like reasons to do these things, there may be elements of truth to that, but one of the problems with that is we're not really smarter than our grandparents. And so what were our grandparents trying to do? After the end of the war, they were creating infrastructure build outside the United States. They were helping these other nations because they knew that would fortify the global system and reduce conflict. And so you got all the acronyms, the UN, the USAID, the World Bank, and all these other things. And so by retracting, it's the question really, and I want to see if you agree with me, when you're retracting, it's causing a problem for the United States, and it's actually playing right into the hands of the long-term strategy of China.
Well, you know me personally, I'm not a nationalist nor a populist, so neither of those sides work.
So I'm a big believer that we have to help middle and lower middle income people. The president's message did resonate in those areas, and so we have to help those people. But what I'm worried about, and I think Valerie agrees with me, if we're pulling out of this and we're pulling out of that, and the Chinese have a 100-year plan, like General Kelly said last night, and we have a 2-minute plan, they're in those areas strategically, and we're disengaging. Is that going to be a long-term problem?
I just want to pause there because I want to segue into 2 topics on that. One, literally looking at our children, and 2, talking about China. Thinking about children and thinking about education, which I think is really one of the most important things in our country today, is college affordability. And this is a topic that I think Elizabeth Warren has really come out with some interesting plans. They're pretty bold, and they're I would say today they're probably the ones that are getting the most airwaves. We have $1.5 trillion of student debt. There was a poll taken last week that 50% of students are deciding between paying college or eating dinner. I mean, that is just batshit crazy. Okay, and so my question is, what should we do?
All right, he said the first curse word on a stage, not me. I want to make sure everybody knows that, okay? Because I'm
paid him to
I'm
say
very
it so that now you have
very
like an
sensitive
open
about my
invitation.
language, you know.
Let me see this, okay?
So what should we be doing
all
on
right.
that?
I'll answer your question, but since Anthony invited me here and asked me a question, I'm answering his question too, which is that the problems that we have globally, I don't think can be solved in isolation. One of the many reasons why President Obama supported TPP, a trade deal that's not normally popular with the Democrats, is because it was going to allow us to open up the Asian market to our businesses and have 11 countries all coming together with some standards that we could all abide by, and it would have isolated China. And without that, it's free reign for China. And so I think we cannot ignore the fact that if we aren't working together, whether it's the Climate Accord or TPP, in ways that promote our interests and the interests of our businesses, other people are going to step up to the plate and fill that void. Education, to me, is the pathway to economic security, obviously. And I am concerned that so many young people now are making career decisions based on the debt that they have to pay back. And having spent half of my career in the public sector, I think that we're going to have a lowering of the number of the people who go into public service because they simply can't afford that and pay back their debt. Our solution to it was to make you only have to pay 20% of your income. So your college debt repayment is tied to your income. And that seems like a fairer method. But I agree with you. Senator Warren is coming up with some substantive ideas, again, that we should be debating. But we cannot ignore the fact that this whole generation of young people is enormously in debt, and that can't possibly be good for them or our economy.
And Anthony, I mean, you're one of the biggest contributors to different kids and colleges and scholarships. I mean, this is something that you just must be pulling your hair out on.
We have to solve it, and so if we've put $1 trillion into financial institutions when they needed it, and we did talking about a $2 trillion infrastructure fund, we have to solve it, and we have to almost like reset the system as it relates to public education at the college level or private education at the college level. But something else is going on, which I think is very, very scary to me. And that is there's vindictive politics taking place now. So give you an example, the Amazon situation. Andrew Cuomo, Democrat, Bill de Blasio, they don't even like each other, Democrats. They're building a system to allow Amazon to come into New York to revitalize New York. And you've got 25,000 jobs, $150,000 a year, positive externalities, $27 billion of tax revenue for the state. But because we have a have and have not society now, and this is where those kids are, they're in that boat, they're angry. Like, okay, wait a minute, we're going to benefit the richest person in the world this much, it's going to benefit me this much, I don't care, I'm going to cut my nose off to spite my face to hurt that person. And they're doing it in Great Britain. Valerie, am I wrong? You're shaking your head, so you agree with me. So what I'm super worried about, if we don't come up with the right policy solutions, and it's got to be bipartisan, and I think that's a big message at SALT. I mean, it's not left or right, it's right or wrong. What are we going to do? The reason why I have so much respect for you, I'm a Republican. I went to see you in the White House. Robert introduced us. You were working in the White House. You didn't have to come to this conference, but you said, okay, you know what? I'm going to come to the conference, and and let's have a bipartisan discussion about what we need to do to fix this. Because here's what's going to happen, okay? Elizabeth Warren, I don't dislike her. I think she's a little bit further to the left than Joe Biden in my mind. Okay, I would like somebody, if a Democrat's going to win, I would like a President Obama or a Joe Biden, frankly, to be candid, if that's the case. But if you're going this way and we get into the politics of indiction and we start to disrupt the entire system, it'd be very, very bad for people, because this system has lifted a lot of people, including my family, out of poverty. Yeah. See what I'm saying? I'm very worried about that.
Yeah. So let's talk about China. And, you know, truth be told, as you know, I'm on Fox TV. I'm a Fox business contributor. They say it's the wolf in the fox den. I've been very tough on President Obama with respect to some of his policies not being tough enough in China, although I was incredibly supportive of TPP. I've been very clear that the best way to attack China is to do trade with the 11 countries surrounding China. Equally, I've been tough with President Trump because I think tariffs are the silliest thing going, because it just attacks the consumer. So as you can see, I'm on both sides where, in my opinion, we haven't found the right solution. China is clear. If you talk to businesses, if you talk to politicians, they continually say our biggest threat, non-militarily, but our biggest threat is China. And it seems that that continues to be, in my opinion, one where, you know, the left and the right are still continually at, you know, I would say a frenzy of we're not doing enough. And so my question, Valerie, is, you know, you were with the president for 8 years. You know, you guys fought tooth and nail to get TPP. It didn't really go, and China's kind of continuing their way. You know, Anthony, you obviously have been very vocal on what you think some of the best ways to compete with China are. So I'd love to hear your guys' perspective.
Before she answers, I just want to ask you this, okay? It is the politics of vindictive politics, because Trump said no TPP, and then Secretary Clinton's position evolved to no TPP. Both of those things were against the interests of the system.
As someone who was on the President's Export Council, trust me, I believe Secretary Clinton was for TPP.
No, okay, but my point is, but she switched her position because of the anger out there and the vindictive. This was nose cutting.
She didn't say she was against it. I think she was a little more non-committal than, well, look.
Irrespective of China.
Yeah, it doesn't matter. My point is that that's what I don't like about what
Valerie,
we're doing now.
I still think it's the best way for us to try to figure out a way to neutralize them by developing relationships with other countries is a win-win for us. We get those partnerships, we open up those corridors for our ability to export, and we raise standards, and they are isolated. Unless we do that, because we also need China. I mean, it is a relationship where it's a huge market for us. We got a lot of folks in this room probably doing business in China. So it's a complicated piece of business.
Anthony?
Well, I mean, I sort of agree on all that. I think that the one thing I don't like about the situation, this has never worked in human civilization, is the demonization of each other and the combat motives of each other and the two-dimensionalizing of each other. Because once we start doing that, then we give ourselves license to do things that are...
But are you supportive of the tariff plan and using that type of blunt instrument?
So let me give you this example. My cousin Augie, you know, every Italian has an Augie in the family, okay? So my cousin...
Vinny.
You know, we got Vinnies and Sals, a lot of Anthony's, Vinnies and Sals, but my cousin Augie, who's been running a auto glass shop on Long Island for 36 years, he's very successful, never went to college. I walked into his auto glass shop about 3 weeks ago, and he says, Anthony, let me show you this. Again, he took out a bill, and he's buying auto glass from China. And unfortunately now, this is the only area of the world that he can buy this glass. Some of it's frankly going into American cars. And he says, okay, see this $10,967 surcharge here? That's the tariff. Okay, so when President Trump is telling people that the Chinese are paying the tariffs and he's tweeting it's going into the conference, I'm paying the tariff. And by the way, I cannot pass it on to these people because I'm in a competition with, you know, Tony's glass shop down the block and Vinny and Sal's glass shop, right? So you know, can you please call the president and tell him that the Chinese are not paying the tariff? Yeah, okay, of course, that's what I'm going to do, right? And he's going to really listen to me. My point is that economically, if you really study economics, it is a very flawed strategy. Okay, now will it reduce trade? with China if we go to 25% tariffs? Yeah, but again, politics of addiction. It's going to hurt the United States and the Chinese equally. Why are we going in that direction?
So before we go back to some, I want to
my
talk.
cousin's paying the tariff. I just want to point that out to everybody.
Some other, I would say, broad topics, but I have some pointed questions, more like one-word type answers. So
Shut up. Yeah, you got that.
I'm not telling you to shut up. I wouldn't say that, but we're moving on.
We're going to talk about we're going to talk about the Sox backstage, though.
We could talk about my Red Sox too. All right. So, domestic issue. What is the domestic issue that's most concerning to you?
Well, it's always the economy, and everything ties to that. So keeping it strong and moving forward and vibrant and inclusive.
Public education, it's uneven, and in certain areas of the country it's not fair, and you're never going to systematize an equal outcome, but we're a smart enough group of people where we can create more equal opportunity. So we got to fix the educational system. And you have to do it.
Mine is gun reform. As you know, my wife works at Sandy Hook Promise, and I think that there's no question we could pass on an up and down vote, universal background checks, but that's a different topic.
Could we pause on that, because it is a good, and I'm going to relate your two comments, because in this respect, I certainly agree with you, Anthony. If you were to poll the American people, 90% of the American people support sensible background checks to keep guns out of the hands of people who are a threat to themselves or to others. Of the 30,000+ people who die every year from gun violence, 2/3 commit suicide. And so there is something very broken in our politics where we can't have your voices represented with an up and down vote. And years have gone by, and many, many tens and hundreds of thousands more people have been killed simply because of a stranglehold that a special interest group has on Congress, where they funnel money in, and in return for that, they silence members of Congress. And it isn't going to be until we all wake up and say we want to stop that.
No,
change who we are electing.
It's the lobby. I mean,
it's the lobbyists.
Let me tell you, there's a lot of disgusting things. I got an 11-day PhD in Washington scumbaggery. I mean, let me just tell you, okay? These lobbyists are unbelievable. Okay, so I remember after, I think it was the Sandy Hook? I mean, it was in Connecticut, right?
Yeah.
I remember watching President Obama's frustration. It's like, okay, what are you guys kidding me? You should be voting for this. Oh no, the NRA gave the money here, gave the money there, gave the money here. Okay, we're not voting for it. Even though it's the right thing to do for the country, hey man, I don't want to do the right thing for the country. I want to stay in the Congress.
And I want to move to some rapid fire, but just to be clear, there is a feeling amongst the high majority that up and down votes on Dreamers, on gun reform, so many different issues would absolutely pass with up and down votes. That's something we should really change, because this system today, nothing's getting done. So so quickly, do you support the legalizing of recreational marijuana? It's a yes or no.
Well, I can't. That's not my personal. I'm not going to do that.
We're never. I need 5 more minutes for our rapid fire round, which is never going to be rapid.
The answer is no, because I don't want kids to become potheads. The answer is no, but it's obviously going to happen anyway, so I'm ready for it. I'm willing to accept it.
Yeah, I wouldn't be for it, but I think Anthony's right. It's coming our way, and so
happening.
I think we have to do as parents and as
want,
people is start educating ourselves about, like, be careful out there.
I would want somebody like Columbia Care.
We're moving next question.
Let me just finish. I would want somebody like Columbia Care. Thank you, sponsor Columbia Care. I would want you.
When you're paying for the event, you get extra time.
Go ahead. No, I'm just saying, I just want people like that involved if we're going that way.
Mayor Pete has become incredibly popular. He was very clear that we should add 15 individuals to the Supreme Court, or at least add, and many now are talking about adding more. Do you think we should add more members to the Supreme Court?
No.
No, 2 no's. Okay. One of the topics that obviously the post-2016 election is the whole argument of the popular vote versus the electoral map. Do you think we should change from electoral map to a popular vote?
Popular vote.
Absolutely not. And I'm going to debate her about that backstage, because the founders wanted to protect the most important minority in the civilization, and that's the individual. And they were trying to protect the society from mob rule, which is why Rhode Island has 2 senators, and so does California.
But they don't have very many people. I want the people to be able to decide.
Wait, Anthony, let her. I'm going to let her.
Well, I'm sorry. I mean, majority democracy to me is about the majority rules, and I don't think that makes it a mob. I think it makes it the majority.
And I can prove to you that when you have a representative democracy, as Ben Franklin and Alexander Hamilton wrote about, what ends up happening is it dies very quickly, because when you get mob rule, the minorities in the situation get destroyed and they go after the mob. But we can talk about it later. If they go after the Electoral College, okay, I will be out there every day on this issue, because it is super important to protect the individual in a Western free democracy. All right. I'm just telling you.
Do you really agree with him, or do you know?
Anthony, tonight, Ambassador Nikki Haley is your keynote speaker. The last 24 hours, I think I've heard, 50 different conversations that President Trump will possibly rid Pence and add her to the ticket. Do you think that will happen?
I do not think.
Do you think it should happen?
I don't think it should happen.
Okay. Valerie.
Were we asking Valerie that one?
No, I don't need to ask Valerie that one. I'm asking Valerie a different one.
All right, go ahead.
What is the policy that you most respect President Trump for?
I already answered that.
Prison reform.
Criminal justice.
Is there a second?
No.
Okay. So, one more last question, then I just want you each talk 30 seconds about each of your books and kind of what it meant to you to write it and those type of things. Valerie, who will be the Democratic nominee in 2020?
Last time I was here, I said Deval Patrick, and before I got back to my room, I had a text from him saying, "What is wrong with you, girl?" So it's too soon to say, and I think there's an embarrassment of riches in the field, and I look forward to seeing candidates get out there.
I can't let you off that easy.
And try to earn your vote. I'm not in the business. I don't want to do that this time, because last time I was kind of kidding, although I do think he would have been a great candidate. Now we're in the hunt, and I don't want to put my thumb on the scale.
Anthony?
I think the president thinks he's running against Joe Biden. I think the odds are that Joe Biden gets the nomination.
You think it will be Joe Biden?
Want to talk about the books, though, or no?
Yeah, I want to spend, we were calling this 8 years and 11 days, so we could also call it a bestseller to not bestseller. But, but we want to make
the record.
No, but we want.
My book was an international bestseller, and if you guys don't believe me, come into my basement. I'll show you every copy I had to buy to make it an international bestseller.
But we want to make Trumponomics a bestseller. The blue collar president. The blue collar. I'm not even going to go there.
I want to go there. I want to go there. Anthony, I wanted Robert Wolf's hair to catch on fire with that title, because he's a lefty, and I knew all the liberals would go crazy with blue collar president, because Trump's born with a golden toilet seat under his hiney, right? You guys know that. And then if you look at Trump's apartment on the internet, it looks like Louis XIV smoked crystal meth and decorated the apartment, right? You know that. So you're saying to yourself, oh my God, why would he call it the blue collar president? But I called it that because I was on the campaign trail with him. And whether you guys like it or not, and this is what he did, you can like it or dislike it, he stole the nomination from the Republican establishment that did not want him to have it, and he reached into the Democratic constituency and took a portion of their base and moved it over to him. That's what he did. Yep. And you could dislike it, but that's what he did. She didn't go to Wisconsin once, my man.
Yep, nope. Valerie, you wrote an incredible book. It's a bestseller, a true bestseller. Although we're going to make Anthony's a bestseller today. Everyone has to make sure to pick up. I
got my publisher here. We're going to start sharing.
There we go. We have 2 right in the front. So
are they repelling each other, the books, like magnets, or what's going on there?
No, put them together.
They're nice. Yeah. They're nice and cushy together.
Yeah.
Why don't you put
$22 unsigned, $2
up against Valerie's
signed.
face? Okay, well, let's do that. Okay?
Don't do that.
Take the 2 books and put them together like that. Okay, I'll get that on my Instagram account. Okay.
Valerie said we need to separate the book part. Tell us a little about your book and why you wrote it.
I wrote the book because after the Obama administration ended and I turned 60, which was very hard to believe, I started to think back over my life and the journey that I took. And when my journey was safe and a straight line and I was sitting at a big fancy law firm filling out timesheets, I was very unfulfilled. And I was in a bad marriage. So the 2 of those combined led to a lot of tears. And when I decided to listen to the most important voice, and that's the quiet one inside of me, and I swerved out of my comfort zone, that's when the adventure began. And so I want to encourage people to swerve.
Amen.
And appreciate the zigzag of life and the fact that we've got multiple chapters, and it's not a sprint, it's a marathon. And at the end, when you look back, the question is, do those multiple chapters add up to something you can be proud of?
Amen, Valerie. God bless. That's an awesome statement.
Listen, I know that this has been a time where we each go to our corners. Whenever we have this debate about politics, everyone feels it is so I'm either for or against. I really think that this conference and what Anthony has done, and by Valerie coming here, and Nikki Haley, and General Kelly, and Susan Rice, and a myriad of others from both sides of the aisle, I think they're telling you that it's okay to be together. It's okay to respectfully disagree. And it's okay to agree on things we should agree on. And I think we should give Anthony an incredible, incredible round of applause for doing this.
Thank you. Thank you for coming. Honestly. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for coming.